This story follows a man who loses everything. Not enemies or jealous rivals, but to the very empire he serves. The kingdom he trains every day to protect doesn't just turn its back on him. It betrays him, shattering his ability to trust anyone ever again. Framed for a crime he never commits, he receives a punishment worse than death. Forced to fight as a hero, he resurrects each time he falls, losing pieces of sanity with every return. This is his story. The anime opens with an ancient book. Its pages slowly turned by unseen hands. On the very first page, a grim declaration was inscribed. The hero penalty was described as the most severe criminal punishment imaginable. Heroes, it explained, were forced to stand eternally on the front lines against demons, denied even the mercy of death. Their sentence was not measured in years, but in eternity. The story then reportedly cut to a young boy sprinting for his life, fleeing from a horde of demons while struggling to carry a package nearly twice his size. Whatever the package contained was clearly important to the plot, because despite his small stature and rapidly declining odds of survival, the boy refused to abandon it. He ran with the kind of determination that only anime logic could justify, prioritizing the mystery box over his own continued existence. Elsewhere, a group of knights was shown battling the same demonic forces. Observers could tell immediately that this was not their best day. Even so, the knights fought on with grim resolve, fully aware that surrender would simply result in their heads becoming demon snacks. The demons, after all, made it painfully clear that they were not in the business of taking prisoners. Meanwhile, the boy's escape came to an abrupt end when he ran himself into a corner. With death all but guaranteed, he made one final, desperate move and called out to his friend, Xylo, hoping for a miracle. In classic anime fashion, that miracle arrived instantly. Xylo was said to appear from nowhere, effortlessly cutting down pursuing demons and immediately establishing himself as both the protagonist and the walking definition of overpowered. After the rescue, Xylo noticed that the boy, who introduced himself as Dado, was gravely injured. Dado calmly asked Xylo to kill him, explaining the heroes were revived later anyway, and that surviving would only make things more painful. Xylo firmly rejected the idea, reminding him that every revival involves summoning a soul back from hell. Each returned damaged memories and stripped away parts of who the person once was. Xylo, fully aware of his own sentence as a hero, declared that he refused to die unnecessarily. His memories, he insisted, were the one thing he would not surrender. Only after delivering this dramatic and oddly philosophical speech did Xylo finally tend to Dado's life-threatening wounds, proving once again that monologues were apparently a medical prerequisite in this world. Once Dado was stabilized, Xylo questioned him about the massive package. Dado admitted that prioritizing over his own life made little sense, but blamed the decision on questionable narrative writing. Upon inspection, Xylo realized the package was actually a sealed grave. When it was opened, it revealed something astonishing. A small, divine-looking girl, unmistakably a goddess. Xylo identified her as one of the goddesses created by humanity as their final hope against the demon threat. No irony intended, he claimed. After this revelation, Xylo and Dado left the goddess where they found her and moved toward a nearby battlefield, where the holy knights were being thoroughly overwhelmed. Dado, despite his reputation, suggested the sensible option of not getting involved. Xylo, however, confidently asserted that he could handle it, citing what could only be described as overwhelming narrative protection. As they prepared to charge in, the goddess overheard Xylo's heroic declaration and awakened fully, recognizing him as her chosen knight. She offered him her power, which Xylo promptly declined, staying true to the long-standing tradition of dense main characters everywhere. Xylo entered the battle alone, defeating waves of demons with single blows. The goddess attempted to assist, but struggled to keep up with his excessive competence. Once the knights were rescued, gratitude was noticeably absent. Rather than thanking Xylo, they were said to feel humiliated at being saved by him. The only reason they refrained from openly insulting him was because the battle had already cost them far more than their pride. Unbothered, Xylo delivered yet another speech, stating that he would continue saving people regardless of how they treated him. This declaration impressed the goddess, now revealed to be named Tiarita, while Dado watched with visible concern for everyone involved. Shortly afterward, Xylo received a call from his associate, Venedim, who informed him of another mission involving imperiled knights and the usual heroic compensation, $0 per hour. Xylo accepted immediately and set off once again, this time accompanied by Dado and the newly awakened goddess, ready to continue his unpaid, eternally thankless career as a hero. Elsewhere on the battlefield, the knights were locked in a brutal life-and-death struggle against the demons, led by their highly capable and undeniably beautiful Captain Kivia. It was reportedly no mystery why so many knights charged so willingly toward what was almost certainly their demise. With a leader like her, morale was high, logic was optional, and survival was negotiable. As the front line of demons surged forward, the knights responded by thrusting their spears, which unleashed crackling green lightning upon impact. The first wave of demons was successfully driven back, but the victory was short-lived. A new class of enemies soon emerged: trolls. These creatures were twice the size of ordinary demons and, unfortunately for everyone involved, significantly uglier. Captain Kivia promptly ordered the deployment of heavier weapons, known as Thunder Ballistae. A massive surge of lightning slammed into the trolls, giving them the kind of headache usually reserved for wisdom tooth extractions without anesthesia. From a distance, Xylo had arrived at the battlefield and observed the chaos quietly. After assessing the situation, he concluded that although Captain Kivia had impressive firepower, she did not have nearly enough ammunition to eliminate the entire demon force. Deciding that intervention was necessary, he prepared to assist. Dado, however, reached a different conclusion. He vanished entirely, leaving behind a note explaining that he had gone to loot fallen knights. Choosing to ignore his companion's priorities, Xylo charged toward the battlefield with Tiarita, hoping he was not already too late. He initially left her behind, but she eventually caught up amid the fighting. After battling his way through the chaos, Xylo finally reached Captain Kivia. She showed little interest in his combat abilities, as her attention was focused entirely on Tiarita. Seeing the goddess on the battlefield shocked Kivia, since she had personally dispatched her earlier and expected her to have reached her destination safely. Xylo informed Tiarita that she was now free to form a pact with any knight she wished attached to the wrong noun, will phrase cleanly, and declared that he was no longer her knight. He assured Kivia that no pact had ever been formed between himself and the goddess. Tiarita strongly objected, but Xylo bluntly replied that this was how things would be, citing his general dislike of goddesses as sufficient explanation. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted when the demon lord finally entered the battle. Compared to the other demons, it was less an enemy and more of a walking natural disaster. The army instinctively launched a massive ballistic attack, a decision that quickly proved unwise when the demon lord reflected it back, wiping out a significant portion of the forces. Captain Kivia proposed using an even stronger weapon, but Xylo warned that if such an attack were deflected, it would obliterate the entire region. He urged her to order a retreat, so the remaining soldiers could survive. Unfortunately, while Captain Kivia was exceptionally skilled and charismatic, strategic restraint was not her strength. Fully committed to the idea of an honorable death, she refused to withdraw. Left with no alternative, Xylo continued fighting alongside the knights. Before long, the battle turned decisively in favor of the demons. Gravely wounded, Xylo collapsed in front of Tiarita. She pleaded with him, insisting that the only way to win was for him to form a pact with her. Xylo stubbornly refused, repeating that he would never form another pact with a goddess. Desperate, he called out to Captain Kivia, urging her to make the pact instead. However, amid the chaos, she was nowhere to be found. With no other option and countless lives at stake, Xylo finally agreed to form a pact with Tiarita. The pact granted him unimaginable power. He gained the ability to summon swords from another dimension, weapons capable of shattering multiple demons at once. Even so, the demon lord proved to be an overwhelming opponent. Despite his newfound strength, Xylo was eventually struck down again as Tiarita desperately tried to rouse him. At that moment, Dado reappeared on the battlefield, having stolen a scorched earth seal from the knights during his looting expedition. Though furious, Xylo quickly realized the potential of the artifact. Using the seal, he waited for the perfect opening and hurled it at the demon lord. The seal activated instantly, obliterating the enemy in a spectacular explosion and securing victory. With the battle won, Tiarita demanded a congratulatory pat on the head. Xylo hesitated but reluctantly complied. Just as he did, Captain Kivia arrived and accused him of stealing the scorched earth seal, defeating the demon lord without authorization, and, most damning of all, killing a goddess. It was then revealed that Xylo had become a hero in the first place because he had previously killed a goddess. The scene shifted to his past trial. Xylo was shown pleading his innocence, explaining that he had killed the goddess he was bound only because she had grown too weak and was being consumed by demons. Allowing her to fall, he argued, would have handed divine power directly to the enemy. The court refused to listen. His explanation was dismissed, and he was sentenced to a lifetime of service as a hero. In that moment, Xylo realized the truth. The entire situation had been a carefully constructed setup from the very beginning. The episode opens with Xylo pinned to the ground by two soldiers, as his fate is announced with all the ceremony of a poorly run execution. The trial that led him there had been blatantly unfair. He had been framed for a crime he never committed, and in that moment, the truth finally settles in. Sinerva's death at his hands had never been an accident or a tragedy. It had been set up from the very beginning. Xylo had simply been the most convenient scapegoat. Still, the higher authorities had decided that killing him outright would be wasteful. His abilities were far too valuable in the ongoing war against the demon blight. And so, instead of mercy, he is given something far worse. Xylo is sentenced to become a hero, eternally bound to crown, resurrected every time he dies, and forced to fight until the end of time. In short, He receives a punishment so severe that death would have felt like a generous compromise. Then, abruptly, he wakes up. It turns out to be a dream, an ugly one dredged up from a past he desperately wishes had never existed. As he regains his bearings, he finds Tiarita standing before him, the goddess with whom he had formed a pact in a moment of pure battlefield desperation. She greets him with all the grandeur expected of a divine, being who knows she looks impressive doing it. She informs him that a man named Venedim had requested that she wake him. Naturally, she expects praise for this monumental achievement. After all, gods do their jobs and then wait patiently to be applauded for it. Xylo, unfortunately for her, is not in an applauding mood. His personality is far too gloomy to thank someone for something as minor as waking him up, and he barely managed any gratitude even after surviving the chaos of their last battle. Internally, he reasons that a goddess has no business forming a pact with an outcast like him. The agreement may have been sealed, but it could just as easily be undone if both parties consented. He reminds Tiarita that she already has his permission to sever the bond. Tiarita, ever the optimist, refuses outright. She is fully aware of Xylo's past, especially the rather inconvenient detail that he is infamous for killing a goddess not unlike herself. Xylo points this out helpfully and suggests that she would be far safer choosing literally anyone else. Tiarita disagrees. She claims she can see through the emotional armor Xylo uses to keep others at a distance. According to her, there must have been a reason behind his actions. He does not strike her as someone capable of such a heinous act without cause. Alternatively, and she seems rather fond of this theory, he may have been framed for that crime as well. Before the conversation can continue, Venedim's voice suddenly blasts straight into Xylo's ear through a wireless connection. Xylo is not fully awake yet, and the sheer volume jolts him into consciousness with all the subtlety of a thunderclap. He immediately tells Venedim to stop shouting. Venedim cheerfully ignores complaint and announces that a new mission awaits. Xylo is instructed to rendezvous with him, along with the goddess, as soon as possible. The connection cuts off shortly after, leaving behind an impressive ringing in Xylo's ears. Moments later, loud chaos erupts outside their tent. Tiarita peers out to see massive insects being violently slayed in rapid succession. Xylo, entirely unfazed, explains that it is nothing to worry about. It is merely a few of his fellow heroes clearing out monsters before coming to say hello. Apparently, this is considered polite. After meeting up with the rest of the hero group, they set off toward their next mission. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Kivia receives her own orders from her superiors. She is tasked with cleansing a tunnel system overrun by demon blight creatures, known ominously as the Zuengan tunnels. The hero group is assigned as backup, should additional force be required. Her superior emphasizes the strategic importance of the mission. Since the start of the Great War, humanity has steadily lost territory to the demon blight. Reclaiming this location would not only halt the enemy's advance, but also recover land long thought lost. Back with the heroes, Xylo introduces Tiarita to his new allies. One of them is Venedim, whose volume control remains theoretical at best. Another is His Highness Norgel, a man who is not actually a king, but is so committed to the idea that everyone has collectively decided it is easier to humor him. His sentence to herohood stems from leading a terrorist attack on the kingdom, which in his mind was apparently just a very misunderstood revolution. The final member is Tatsuya. He speaks little and lingers even less. He has been a hero longer than any of them and has been resurrected so many times that he has completely forgotten who he once was. Even his past feels like a story about someone else. Xylo finds his fate deeply unsettling. The idea of losing his identity piece by piece disgusts him. That is why, despite knowing that heroes can always be revived, he makes a personal rule to avoid dying whenever possible. After all, immortality is far less appealing when it comes at the cost of forgetting who you are. Eventually, the hero team arrives at the town bordering the Zuengan tunnels. As they wander through its streets, it becomes painfully clear that the place is as lifeless and gloomy as a town can possibly be. Given its proximity to demon blight territory, this desolation is hardly surprising. Many of the townspeople have already fallen victim to the blight, leaving behind empty homes and an atmosphere thick with despair. Xylo attempts to gather information by approaching a local woman and asking about the tunnel that has claimed so many lives. The moment she realizes he is a hero, her expression hardens. Heroes, after all, have earned a grim reputation for committing heinous acts under the guise of duty. Xylo assures her that he means no harm, but his words fail to comfort her. She turns away, dismissing his presence entirely, bitterly stating that their help is useless. If they truly intended to save the town, they should have come sooner. Now, most of it is already lost. Not long after, Xylo encounters a young girl who hesitantly speaks to him about the Zuengan tunnels. With tears streaming down her face, she explains that her father entered the tunnels and never returned. Xylo finds himself unable to offer even a false promise of hope. He knows all too well that there is no realistic chance her father is coming back. More than likely, he has already become another casualty of the demon blight. With heavy hearts, the heroes make their way toward the tunnels. Along the way, their discussion turns to the sacred seals, abilities some claim are divine wisdom bestowed upon humanity by the gods themselves. Xylo reflects that, in his current physical condition, he can only wield 2 of them, a limitation he is keenly aware of. Upon reaching the tunnel entrance, Venadim promptly excuses himself from active combat, retreating with the enthusiasm of someone who firmly believes survival is the noblest contribution he can make. The remaining heroes press forward, only to find themselves digging through what appears to be a dead end in order to reach the demon blight monsters lurking deeper within. Before long, Kivia arrives at the tunnel and confronts Xylo. She accuses his ally, Dado, of stealing the package that once carried to Eurita. Xylo responds calmly, pointing out that she would never believe his innocence in the matter if he had presented the truth so plainly. He then addresses what he considers the real issue. Something about this mission does not sit right with him. The tunnel had been ignored for a long time, deemed too dangerous or too unimportant to reclaim. Yet suddenly, it has become a top priority for the higher authorities, important enough to deploy knights, heroes, and even a goddess. To Xylo, the situation reeks of ulterior motives. Kivia, however, dismisses his suspicions, telling him to abandon the conspiracy theories and focus on the task at hand. Xylo and Tatsuya resume digging until they finally break through and encounter the demon blight monsters. Xylo is the first to engage, activating his explosive sacred seal and triggering controlled detonations with his throwing knives. He carefully restrains the blast, knowing that excessive force could collapse the tunnel and bury them all alive. Tatsuya, on the other hand, faces no such limitations. He moves with lethal precision, cutting down wave after wave of demon blight creatures without hesitation. Together, their combined skill proves overwhelming. The horde is eliminated without a single casualty among the heroes. Not long afterward, a distress signal reaches them from Kivia. Xylo and the others immediately rush toward the section of the tunnel where she and her knights are stationed. Finding her overwhelmed, Xylo and his peers are given permission to engage freely, and they swiftly neutralize the remaining demon blight threats. In the aftermath, they discover a terrified human survivor, too shaken to speak. Kivia consults Xylo about the potential casualties of launching a full-scale rescue operation deeper within the tunnel. Xylo responds with a grim estimate, one that forces her to reconsider the plan entirely. In the end, Xylo chooses to shoulder the danger alone. Tyrita's life is far too precious to him to risk her being trapped in a collapse. Although she is willing to lend him her power, he decides to move ahead without her, ensuring that if everything goes wrong, she will not be buried alongside him. For Xylo, this is a risk worth taking, because some lives cannot be gambled, even in a war where death is routine.